Ladies and gentlemen, it's that time again. The 2024 Ultimate Uniform 50% off Black Friday mega buying guide is here. We do this every year. This is the only time of the year you get it 50% off. So let's dive right in so you can make the best possible decisions for yourself and your account, and you can make those juicy gains on uniforms when they are at their maximum discount. Now, I've already started the list for you guys because there's so many. There's over 100 uniforms in this tier list, and I wanted to give you as much detail as possible, so we had to skip some. But unfortunately, they're all in the exact same category for the exact same reason. You cannot buy them right now. These are seasonal uniforms. I did my best to organize them by how recently they were released. So you can see the 2024 lineup here from Angel down to Abomination. A lot of these uniforms are meta, right? Luna's very meta. Mysterio and Sin are meta for support, as is Coulson and Yondu. And then you have Psylocke is meta for ABL. You have Rogue being very good for farming. Ghost Rider's obviously the GOAT. Even Black Bolt's still pretty good. So unfortunately, there's a lot of good characters there. However, fortunately, there are still a lot of good characters that are available right now. So, you know, keep that in mind, but also keep that in mind, right? it's both good and bad. Next thing I want to talk about briefly is the legendary battle rewards. So remember, these are characters that have better, more recent uniforms or are just not very good, right? So in the case of Loki and Hela and Thor, they have more recent uniforms, and Iron Man, frankly. They have more recent uniforms that are better for sure. But these uniforms specifically are good because you can exchange them during legendary battles, basically, for CTPs or premium cards. So you do have to buy the associated legendary battle for Iron Man, Giant Man, Ultron, and Shang-Chi. You have to buy, you know, the Infinity War one, the Ant-Man one, and the Shang-Chi Legend of the Ten Rings one. But then in return, you can exchange those for CTPs. In the case of Thor and Loki, there is no legendary battle because it was the first one for Thor Ragnarok. So if you buy these older uniforms and just build them up to, I think, Heroic, you get a free premium card, which in the case of equipping it is not very good because Loki 1 and Loki 2 are not great. But in the case of using them for re-rolling, it's some of the cheapest ways in the game to get a free premium card, essentially, to re-roll. And then for Hela, that represents the fastest and easiest way and cheapest way to get a CTP of energy, because it's like, you know, 900 crystals guaranteed, and you just get it up to legend or heroic or whatever, and you also can use it as an optional if it ever pops up. Buyer beware here. This is pretty straightforward. This is uniforms that I just personally think are going to get replaced soon and therefore don't have that much value. Now, this is subjective. This is like my personal opinion. Some of these characters are sort of slipping from the meta. They're not very good anymore. Other characters I just personally think are not very good, or I think their uniforms, you know, didn't do enough for them, etc. And so because of that, they, you know, they need to be replaced. I just noticed that I left Storm off the cannot buy list, so I'm going to drag her in here. This cannot buy list is not exhaustive. You're probably saying, like, where's Iceman? Where's Groot? I left off the very useless uniforms, essentially, and I only added the ones that are either most recent or actually still most useful. Some of the picks from Buyer Beware may seem pretty obvious because they're not really meta characters. I just wanted to point this out because there are characters that are still good or still have uniforms, you know, that's their most recent one, and so that logic still applies where you're like, oh, it's their most recent uniform. We should, you know, I should get them. But then you know, if you take a closer look, you'll see that the you know, the character is not very good, or they're gonna get a you know, a rework in the future for something else. All right, so upon further consideration of the Buyer Beware category, which ballooned to like 30 characters, I decided to add in an additional category called Decent. And these characters, I think, are just decent. It's not necessarily that they're worth a pickup for every single account. And I'll put, you know, Mr. Fantastic here. I'll put X23 here. You can see that these are sort of like PvP focused, recent tier 4s that need a lot of synergies to be good, or need very, very specific builds to be good. They're not necessarily tier 4s in some cases, like Anti-Man, Sabretooth, and Dakin. But they're just like pretty decent characters, you know, for very specific niche abilities, probably usually for PvP. You can put Blue Dragon here as well for Warriors of the Sky. I'd put Echo here as well as a speed tier 4, sort of like pseudo support lead. You can even put Mystique here because of her support, although it's not like fantastic. It's obviously not as good as like Beta Ray Bill or something like that. But yeah, I would put these characters here. And yeah, I guess maybe you could put Hulkbuster here. He also has some support abilities for machine type allies. And yeah, you know what? I think you could put Ebony Maw here as well. And I would also put Gamora here as well. So, okay, quite a few. Maybe like half the list of Buyer Bewares are decent. Now, talking about the Buyer Bewares, some of them are pretty straightforward. You know, Miss Marvel hasn't gotten tier 4 yet. So these are all just placeholder uniforms I would just completely skip. Same thing as last year. Although Thane and Thing are both in the T's, and their uniforms are new. Yeah, in this case, they didn't get tier 4, so at the time they get tier 4, they're going to get a new uniform. They're going to be much, much better. Thing in particular didn't get much better. Thane did, so if you really want to play with Thane, sure, knock yourself out. But otherwise, yeah. We've talked about why Captain Falcon is going to be, Zombie Captain Falcon is going to be replaced. Victorious is technically a support, but I feel like she's just not very useful anymore. So I think like 30% HP, you just can't really consider that a support anymore. These days, it doesn't really matter for much. And then whatever her leadership does for Doom obviously doesn't help much because Doom is not very good. Rescue is pretty straightforward. Same sort of thing as Thing and Miss Marvel, where it's not tier 4 uniform, so it's not good enough. These list of tier 4s up to Loki, so from Black Widow to Shadow Shell, they're just not very good. That's just the explanation for them as tier 4. Namor has some niche use for things like zombie survival. I recognize that, and Black Widow for PvP, but it's very, very niche, and there are much better options. Loki is technically meta, but it's only for one specific thing, ABX ABL, and you must have a max out build, right? You must have like a brilliant rage build. So I believe for most players, it's just too expensive, and it's just not worth, the juice is not worth the squeeze. So that's why he's a buyer beware, but he's technically meta. He's kind of in a weird position. He's kind of an odd bird. And then for Carnage, buyer beware, because there was a data mined clue that implies the existence of a future Carnage uniform. And we haven't seen the sneak peeks. We haven't seen the details yet for possibly Null tier 4, possibly Carnage tier 4. So if that's something that's interesting to you, you should bank up some crystals for them, save some crystals, put some crystals aside so you can pick up those uniforms later. But also be aware that this uniform may be replaced very soon, so you don't want to buy it and then have, obviously, buyer's remorse. The next category is pretty straightforward. These are support legends. I am not going to try to category or like rank them amongst each other this time around. I've done that many times before, and I'm sure you can sort of figure things out for, you know, how these characters play out and sort of how they're going to buff your account. I am putting both Strife and Wasp here as supports for Otherworld Battle, although they technically do the same thing, and Wasp adds a little bit more buffs that you know, as Strife does not. Also keep in mind specifically for Taskmaster, he is a support legend, but I would put him in buyer beware due to the Thunderbolts movie. So with the Thunderbolts movie, and that's also why I have Yelena down here, there's a strong possibility that they're both going to be getting new uniforms because they both feature prominently in the movie. And that's coming out in like 6 months. So just keep that in mind. I mean, you could still pick up Taskmaster as a support for the next 6 months. It's possible the next uniform they give Taskmaster won't be a support uniform. So to you know, keep this value here, we don't know. This is just speculation on my part, but just something to keep in mind because they are getting potentially new uniforms in the next 6 months. Beta Ray Bill, man, so goated, so goated. There's a few missing here that I've talked about, not necessarily ad nauseum, but they're for a long time, like Sif and things like that, where the uniform is still good. It's still a good support uniform, so don't get the impression that if a uniform is not on here and it's a support uniform and it was good last year, that's suddenly terrible this year. No. You can exchange this Shuri for the tracksuit Shuri, although I think the tracksuit Shuri looks worse and also doesn't have the leadership for speed types. So I much prefer the Black Panther Shuri, but that is a little bit, tiny bit of a personal preference, I guess. I don't know. Red Goblin is pretty much solely a support now, but he's amazing as a support, so we're going to put him there. She-Hulk is there mostly as a leadership, but she does have the artifact. She has access to the artifact for buffing the Gamma allies, but obviously, you know, the leadership is really what the uniform is for. And then we have the new Wong zombie one. Again, this only applies to magic allies, so keep that in mind, but it does apply there. And then we have the Spider-Woman. And then we have Robbie. We sort of talked about Robbie, where he's not a great support because he essentially just supports one character, which is Ghost Rider. But yeah, I still wanted to mention him because he's still pretty good, and what he does, he's still good at. Honestly, as crazy as it sounds, I'm going to put War Machine in support legends as well. I don't think he's a support legend. I think, honestly, he's more like decent, but he is technically a support, and he has actually quite a good support for machine allies with, you know, the new uniform. So I do think he deserves some mention there. So that basically does it for all of the characters that are sort of adjacent to value, but not necessarily directly giving you a ton of value, because they're either supporting other characters or they're providing rewards and things like that. The top two categories are really where the meat and potatoes is for Marvel Future Fight, the PvE and PvP gods. Now, this list is, again, subjective. It's my personal opinion, and you're free to sort of disagree with me. And these characters will have varying degrees of value based on whether you're going to tier 4 them or whether you're going to keep them at like tier 380. But I'll try my best to not only organize them. Let's see here. I'll try my best not only to rank them horizontally, but also to talk individually about each one here. Kicking off the list, we've added in Doctor Strange to the top of PvE and Sentry to the top of PvP, with Wolverine closely behind. I think these are not going to change, frankly. As good as someone like Jean is, Doctor Strange is just better and stronger and easier to play and just absolutely dominant. Deadpool's a tricky one because he's actually pretty good for both PvE and PvP, but he's like kind of a jack of all trades in a way. Someone like Gladiator, someone like Dr. Octopus has niche value for PvE. I said more niche, I'd say, than someone like Venom, in my opinion, but they can technically go higher in specific content, so that is certainly worth something to you if it is for ABX/ABL. Me personally, I think Venom is better. Just the combination of abilities he has. He does have auto healing along with Gladiator, which does make him kind of the same, but I would give him the edge with the V-Pad skill and with a much easier playstyle and with a much cooler tier 3. I think Gladiator, honestly, they kind of, I don't want to say they missed the mark, but yeah, Gladiator does have more PvP value, but yeah, that's something else to consider. Chasm shouldn't be here at all. He should be a support legend. My bad there. Gwenpool, again, niche value, but still good and quite easy to play. Hulk, I would say he's quite good for both pieces of content, so I would put him ahead of Gladiator because he does a lot of stuff really well for PvE, but then he can also perform quite well in PvP. Actually, you know, he deserves to be ahead of Venom as well, in my opinion. Captain Marvel, I think, is actually kind of underrated. She is not meta for any one piece of content, sort of like Sharon Rogers, but she hits really, really hard. She's not the most friendly character to play. She does take a little bit of practice and a little bit of learning, but I would say that she's pretty good, and I think she's a little bit underrated. Human Torch is probably near the bottom of PvE gods. I don't know if I'd call him a god. He just hits really, really hard. That's just the fact. He hits really, really hard. Invisible Woman is basically like the best in terms of like offensively minded debuff cleansing supports. So yeah, technically she's a support like Wasp and Strife, but she's more than that because she can actually hit hard. She actually has some defensive abilities. She's tier 4able, etc. So yeah, unlike, well, Angel, yeah, but he's not available right now. Miles was already a good PvE god, and then he got the Team Up Collection, so he hits even harder. Yeah, really, really good. Just not meta for anything because there's no restrictions that, you know, cater to speed male heroes, so you can't really justify that there. Captain America still pretty good for PvP, especially like Otherworld Battle and Conquest. You do need to pair him with other zombies, so he does have a bit of conditional value, but certainly much better performance than Mr. Fantastic with less of a build. Adam still hanging on to one of the top spots in PvP. I gotta say, I am a bit of a biased hater to Adam Warlock. I think he's overrated, and I personally think he will be slipping in the next 6 months. That's just my personal opinion. That's my kind of projection. Spider-Man hasn't done enough to dethrone him, I would say. That's not Spider-Man, that's Agent Venom, who deserves to be a support legend. My bad. They all look alike. Yeah, okay, there we go. So Spider-Man, all the symbiotes, yeah. Spider-Man hasn't done enough to dethrone Adam, but it also hasn't been enough time. So we'll see. Time will tell in that sort of situation. Apocalypse, he's not really a PvP god, but he's good. He's good enough. I would say he's good enough. Him and Doom are good enough. Listen, for Otherworld Battle, which, like it or not, it's one of the premier game modes, right? It's premier PvP game modes, I should say. Some people would say it has better rewards than Timeline Battle. So in some cases, you should be building for Otherworld Battle instead of Timeline. But yeah, when the first tier of metas are banned, right? When the first 5, 6 of these cats are banned, everybody jumps to, in the top tiers anyways, jump to Adam and Doom. So I have to give them a little bit of credit there. I do give more credit to sorry, not Adam and Doom, Apocalypse and Doom. I do give more credit to Apocalypse, though. He does maybe need a bit more, his build needs to be better than Doom's, but he affects more of the battle, I feel, with the debuff cleanse for mutants. Then we have Cable. Honestly, he's not really a PvE god anymore. I'd say he's decent. But he was a PvE god last time, and yeah, it's a bit sad to see the slippage, but it is what it is. Iron Man just hits super hard, just like Human Torch. He just hits so hard. It's like Sharon, right? Just really hard-hitting characters that aren't meta because they don't have any game modes catering to them, but still good, right? Still good. Same thing goes with Odin. Just hits really hard. Has some crossover PvP value, which is nice. Very rare. Quicksilver, again, like Apocalypse and Doom, when everybody else is when everybody else in the top tier is banned, he gets a lot of play. Same thing with Rachel as Doom and Apocalypse and Quicksilver. Scarlet Witch, meta for quite a bit of content, fun to play. I would probably put her somewhere like there. I think she's quite nice. I wish she had a little bit harder personally, but still good. Spider-Gwen is still good and has some crossover PvP value, but I think the cracks are starting to show, and her scores are much lower than Luna's for similar content. So I would almost put her in like decent plus, but that's just my personal opinion. And then the newest Thanos, definitely PvP, definitely probably there. Yeah, that's probably where he deserves to be. He's kind of slipping slowly, very, very slowly. He's like really just, nudging himself down the hill over time. And it's very hard to notice that he's slipping, but he is. And you can just see it in the number of players and teams that use him and utilize him effectively. And then, Spider-Man and all these heroes just coming in and trying to one-shot him makes it kind of difficult for him. So yeah, that's essentially the list. Apologies for Black Swan there. This is over 100 uniforms ranked. I think this is pretty representative of Marvel Future Fight. Let me just quickly re-rank Thor because he doesn't deserve to be there. There we go. But yeah, this takes into consideration all content, so it doesn't bias one thing or another. For sure, people in PvP or people in ABX ABL are gonna have strong opinions about my ranking, for better and for worse. That's okay. Hit me up in the comments down below and let me know what you think of this list. If you don't want to hit me up down below in the comments, you can hit me up on Discord. We have the most vibrant MFF Discord community in the world, over 18,000 members and growing. So hit it up, discord.gg/thenewmeta. Thank you for watching. I'll have a best Black Friday deals and sales tomorrow, the next video. So keep it locked for that. Smash the like button if you enjoy the content. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.